All praise going on is more than due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Peace to you. In the name of His Son, I count it a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to preach the word. Never do I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to get right into today's topic, and it's answering a question I was asked at the end of question and answer, the question and answer period on the Sabbath. And that is referring to dealing with Sister Asia. Question was dealing, peace to you, Brother Isaiah. It was dealing, and Brother Marcus, it's dealing with how do you read the Bible? The question went something like, I've read from Genesis to Revelation, but how do you understand it? And also, I want to point out this, that we do have a brother and a sister in Ohio. I don't know where you're at, but if you listen to this, you can send through email or have you want to contact the Household of Faith. And if you're in that area, hopefully, again, maybe we can fellowship, y'all can fellowship together. But nevertheless, I'm in, let's see. I'm going to start off in Romans because I can remember going to church. I remember picking up the Bible. I mean, I was young. And I can remember trying to understand, because that's one thing that was not going on in the church. I remember being in church while he was preaching. I picked up the Bible. I remember as a little boy, and I picked it up. I said, look, Mom, I read a whole page. And I read another page. And as an adult, I realized I didn't understand what I was reading. Don't get me wrong. But I was the only one actually reading. In that instance, if we would stand up, we would say the text is, we read one verse, and this man would commence to telling his life story. He talking about everything except what thus said the Lord. He taking things out of context, doing all of that. Okay. So, and then when people really feel like I really want to know, they are oftentimes discouraged because they pick up the book and they can't read it. They can't read it. We're going to find out why they can't read it. We're going to find out how you should read it. One thing it's not a novel. Okay. This is not Huckleberry Finn. You can it's not, you don't read this like you would read something else. Okay. And it's a sealed book. The Bible tells you that. Okay. So we're going to find out some things. This is Romans. Let's pick it up in Romans, the 10th chapter. And we're going to pick it up in Romans 10 and 14 verse. Because if you want to understand what thus saith the Lord, what the Bible is saying, or what his word is saying, this is what you need. This is Romans 10 and verse 14. It says, how then shall they call on him of whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? Okay. So now you don't know how you gonna know about him, the one who came in the volume of this book. It says, how shall they then call on him of whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him who they not heard? So you don't know him, you haven't heard about him. And how you gonna hear about him without somebody telling you about him? Okay. See, somebody has to tell you. I didn't get any understanding until somebody told me what time it was. Okay. Then he said, how shall they preach except they be sent? You got a lot of people saying they sent from God. They picking up a Bible, but like they do in a lot of these churches, they say, this is the Bible. I believe what it says is written. I believe all of it. And then they commence to telling you lies. Okay. But it says in verse 15, and how shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. So they bring the good news or the gospel. But understand, it's contained within the text. Let's see an example of this. Let's go to Acts. And then ultimately, it's your point. It's you're doing this for salvation. But let's go to Acts, the 8th chapter. And salvation is focused particularly on the Messiah when you look at this, or the Mashiach when you look in this book. But Acts, the 8th chapter, we're going to pick it up at verse 30. Just see an example of this. We're going to pick it up at verse let's just pick it up in verse 26. Acts the 8th chapter, verse 26. It says, and the angel of the Lord spake unto Philip, saying, arise and go toward the south unto the way that goeth down from Jerusalem unto Gaza, which is desert. And he arose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, an eunuch of great authority under Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who had the charge of all the treasure, and had come to Jerusalem for the worship. was returning and sitting in his chariot, read Isaiah the prophet. Then the Spirit said unto Philip, go near and join thyself to this chariot. And Philip ran thither to him and heard him read the prophet Isaiah. And Philip asks a fundamental question. This is an important question. He says, understandest thou what thou readest? So many read the Bible. Some people, I've heard people literally quote verbatim entire books of the Gospels, but have no understanding about what is being said. You have people with great memory. You memorizing it is not understanding it. Okay? Memorization and understanding are not synonymous. So he said, understandest thou what thou readest? Do you understand what you are reading? You're reading Isaiah. He was reading Isaiah. He's reading a prophecy about this one. He said, do you understand? Understandest thou what thou readest? Do you understand? And the response, this eunuch has some wisdom. It's an Israelite eunuch. Okay, it says Ethiopian. We should understand he's an Israelite. And he said, how can I? In other words, how can I understand except some man should guide me? So when people say, I'm trying to read the Bible and I don't understand what it's saying, you're not going to understand necessarily what it says. You're not going to get understanding because you need somebody to explain to you what you are reading. And that's how it goes. Just like I'm on here explaining, just my father is on here explaining to you what the Bible's saying, just like I come on here explaining what the Bible's saying. Somebody taught him, somebody taught me that, and now we teaching you. That's how it goes. You can't understand it except unless it is explained unto you. And you have a part in that process. We're gonna get to that. But he said, how can I except some man should guide me? No, I don't understand this. I'm reading, but I don't understand it. And I'm gonna just say this on a side note. One of the real huge problems we have as a people is that we are functioning illiterates. We are illiterate. You know, you ever heard people that were on drugs, but they were functioning addicts, functioning alcoholics. They get drunk every night, but they go to work every day. They get high at night, but they be at work in the morning. Brothers and sisters, we have a serious problem with literacy. Many of us cannot read. So that's one part, just reading in general. This used to be the book that we used to use to teach our youth how to read. Most people in America back in the day, that's what they used. They used the classics too, but they used the Bible to know how to read. We don't read. So you don't have the prerequisite skills to even understand certain things. So a lot of figurative language you don't understand. A lot of things you read, you're taking out of context. We don't understand context. That's just a side note. We have a problem with that. But when we can read perfectly, pronounce everything in here and not understand it. He said, how can I? He said, understand it's not what thou readest. And he said, talking about the eunuch, he said, how can I except some man should guide me? Okay. In other words, I need somebody to help me understand this. I need somebody to help me understand this. So he says, and he desired Philip that he would come up and sit with him so he can get some understanding. It says in verse 32, the place of the scripture which he read was this: he was glad as a sheep to the slaughter, and like a lamb dumb before his shearer, so opened he not his mouth. In his humiliation, his judgment was taken away, and who shall declare his generation? For his life is taken from the earth. And the eunuch answered Philip and said, I pray thee, of whom speaketh the prophet this, of himself or of some other man? So he read it, but he didn't understand who Isaiah was talking about. She asked the question, is Isaiah talking about himself Or is he talking about somebody else? I don't understand. People go to Genesis and can't get out of Genesis 1. They like, what's going on? They don't understand because they don't understand that this is all going together. He's even telling the end in Genesis. They don't understand that. You can read, they don't understand what they're reading. So then in addition to that, you have that which was in Hebrew in English. That's a whole nother issue. But he says, and the eunuch answered Philip and said, I pray thee, of whom speaketh the prophet this, of himself or of some other man? Then Philip opened his mouth and began at the same scripture and preached unto him Jesus. Okay, he preached unto him Jesus. Like he said, how shall they call on him whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? Right? Somebody has to explain it. And then they said, how shall they preach except they be sent? Right? We see in this case, Philip sent by the angel, but the man of God is sent as well. Okay? So now, for example, like a watchman. Okay? Like he told Ezekiel, I said there as a watchman, warn the people of me. But he says then in verse 35 of Acts 8, then Philip opened his mouth and began at the same scripture and preached unto him Jesus. And as they went on their way, they came unto a certain water, and the eunuch said, here is water. What doth hinder me to be baptized? See, so he heard the gospel. One is coming to save you. He died and said, you just believe on him and be baptized in his name. But you know who he is based on what the prophets have said. He had to tell his own disciples that. O fools and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. So now he says in Luke writes in verse 37, and Philip said, if thou believest with all thine heart, thou mayest. How you going to believe? And who you not heard? How shall you hear without a preacher? So it says, and Philip said in verse 37, and Philip said, if thou believest with all thine heart, thou mayest. And he answered and said, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. But you believe it based on what was written. Like I said, he came in the volume of the book. It is written to me to do thy will. He said, and he commanded the chariot to stand still, and they went down, both of them into the water, both Philip and the eunuch, and he baptized him. But he baptized them based on the gospel. And he understands that's based on what is written. Let's stay in Acts and go to the 17th chapter, because you have a duty when it comes to what's written. Here we see, and again, we read, we should understand even why we read. We were reading, brothers and sisters, not to have some exercise and intellectual exercise to show what you know. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to get salvation. The purpose is to find out what you need to do to gain salvation. And one of the main things you have to do is you have to believe on him and who this whole book is talking about. Okay? So now this is Acts the 17th chapter, because here Paul the apostle, he's coming to the people in Thessalonica, and listen to what it says here in verse 1. It says, now when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews. So they go into the place of worship. And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the scriptures. So now he's reasoning with them out of the scriptures. Okay. And then it says, opening and alleging that Christ must needs have suffered and risen again from the dead, and that this Jesus whom I preach unto you is Christ. Okay. So now he's preaching unto them, but he's using the scriptures. Now they didn't believe. Now let's skip down a little bit and let's go to verse 10, because they left there and they went into a different city. Verse 10, and the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night unto Berea, who coming thither went into the synagogue of the Jews. these were more noble than those in Thessalonica, and that they received the word with all readiness of mind, so they were accepting of the word. And it said, and search the scriptures daily, whether those things were so. So they were trying to, so your duty, if you want to know, you want to understand, first of all, you have to be taught. Secondly, you have to ensure that what the person is telling you can be found in the book. The book is the authority. The book is the authority. And with that, brothers and sisters, I'm going to end this right here. I'm going to come right back on because I have to fix something on this camera. I'm going to come back on in about 5 minutes or less.